everyone that's joined. We will start the webinar at 11:03. Hey everyone, we will begin the webinar in 1 minute. All right, thank you everyone for joining. On behalf of Netwoven, I'd like to welcome you to our session on Nintex. My name is Jeremy Taylor. I'm part of the customer success team at Netwoven, and I will be the facilitator of today's webinar. My goal is to help you get the most out of this presentation, and a quick note on logistics. If you have any issues during the webinar, please look at the upper right-hand corner of your screen and you should see a GoToWebinar control panel. In that panel, you can also post questions by typing in the lower right-hand box or clicking the raise hand issue. Just a quick note on Netwoven, we are a full-service technology consulting firm serving mid-sized to Fortune 1000 companies. We recently celebrated our 15th anniversary and continue to provide thought leadership in the areas of SharePoint and Office 365, analytics and machine learning, and recently over the last 2 years in digital marketing with a specific focus on Dynamics 365 and Salesforce. We feel fortunate to work with many of the firms on this page, and thank you to our customers from these companies on our webinar today for your continued business. As you can tell, we have a lot of different focuses at Netwoven, but primarily we do focus on SharePoint, Office 365, analytics, and also business intelligence. With that, I would like to hand it over to our presenter today, Alex Viera, Nintex Architect at Netwoven. And Alex, go ahead, please.
Thank you for your time today, everybody. I realize your time is precious, so I want to make sure that we get you as much information as possible to help you understand what Nintex can do and what the product offers. Just a little background on myself. You're probably going to have a lot of questions today. Please feel free to send me an email at alexv@netwoven.com, as it says at the top here, and I will answer any questions that you have that I wasn't able to address today. I have a pretty packed agenda to show you some really cool stuff today. As you can see, I worked for Microsoft for almost a couple of decades and did a lot of stuff in the geospatial area with Bing and Google Maps. And my main focus over the last years has been working with Nintex and making sure that all the customers that we have are reference customers. That's our goal, is to make sure that everyone is successful with this product. So this is one thing I want you to take away. If you decide to move forward with Nintex, I will supply you with a list of customer references to show you how Nintex solve some of their problems, and also how we at Netwoven work with customers to make sure they're successful. One thing I wanted to point out today, and part of the basis for what I'm showing you today, is when we take a look at how much time and productivity are lost based on some everyday things that everyone does. So if you take a look here in blue, which is something that's personal productivity that you do as an individual, and also looking at everything in kind of the yellow-orange color are activities that are related to collaboration. And what you're looking at here is a graph that shows how many hours per week one individual, one information worker spends, how they spend their time during a day. So what we'd like to really show you is today how Nintex can really help you save time, save money, but also save every individual the time that they're spending on this. And one thing you'll find is if you multiply the amount of time you save people over all the employees, it's a really substantial amount of resources and time that you can put back into the company. A lot of the things that we end up doing within the organization, especially if you're in IT, is you're creating forms. It might be an info path, it might be in other products as well, but a lot of times the IT pro becomes the bottleneck for a lot of these types of forms. Or it can be a development task as well if you have a development arm within your organization. But the whole idea here is a lot of these everyday processes take 15, 20, 30 minutes. I know you can probably relate to having to do expense reports, and I usually always wait till my wallet is so thick I can't even fold it in half, and then I do it. And then when I do it, it's a lot of time and it's very painful. So what we'd like to do is take the pain away from a lot of these everyday processes and save everyone the hurdles that you have to go through that make it so unenjoyable. So we'll talk to this as well. One thing I wanted to also emphasize too is we talk to a lot of companies and help them solve HR issues as far as the whole stage of employment life cycle, from the recruitment to the offboarding of employees. And a lot of times when you take a look at the first two boxes, those first two boxes are probably the most critical in having to coordinate between individuals to make sure whether you're making a good hire or a bad hire. So when you look at the high percentage of people that actually end up quitting within the first month or two, you've spent a lot of money on that investment of just getting those people to that level. And even worse in a situation when it gets to a legal problem and dealing with someone, it can cost a tremendous amount of money. And one of the things about this is it's usually just a matter of being on point and coordinating all the activities involved from the recruitment stage all the way onto the onboarding stage. So just keep that in mind, and I'm going to show you towards the end some of the ways that Nintex is being used in other organizations. As far as the platform goes, and this is where I want to really point this out, that Nintex offers a lot of different functionality. And I really want to point out the fact that when you look at other tools or competitive products, like InfoPath and such, a lot of these tools, going beyond just the basics, requires you to be a developer. And you're usually having to get in there and code and do stuff like that. What I want to point out with the Nintex platform, the whole premise around Nintex is kind of enabling people that are not developers. But having said that, if you are a developer, you can take this product to another level by being able to make modifications. But out of the box, you can do a tremendous amount of functionality and really help your organization. So let's start on the left here. One thing that Nintex offers is a browser-based workflow designer to be able to drag and drop different actions that need to take place, like sending an email, sending a task to be completed, communicating with the database, pushing and pulling information from different systems. If you have Salesforce or Microsoft CRM, we can get information in and out. We can also create forms, and one of the things about the forms, and I'll get into more detail as we go into the demonstration, is being able to create forms for any device. So we're not just talking about for the desktop, we're talking about mobile devices, we're talking about tablet devices, we're talking about iPad, iPhone, Android, being able to pretty much cover every type of device that's out there and being able to push these forms out there. Another thing is, when we talk about deploying forms anywhere, besides a mobile device, we can also go to the internet. So there might have been times when you thought about pushing out a survey, or you had another company that needed to fill out some information and you don't want to give them access to your SharePoint environment. What you can do is you can take a form, a SharePoint form that you've created with Nintex, and actually give a person a URL to it. They must authenticate, and then they can fill out that form, and that information will go all the way back into the SharePoint environment. So some really unique scenarios that you can solve with that you probably never thought about. The other side of this is the Nintex Mobile, giving people the ability to be able to push the forms to a mobile device and have as many users as you want. They must authenticate. Any list and forms that they have access to, they'll be able to submit data on the mobile device and also work disconnected. So you don't have to be connected to a mobile network for that to be able to work. And the last thing here is Nintex Live. This is the ability to collaborate with other cloud services, like if you have something like Box, or like I said, Salesforce.com. Nintex Live is the gateway for communicating with these cloud services. So this gives you the connection to be able to collaborate. There's one other thing I wanted to point out that's coming out in 2 weeks. In 2 weeks, you're going to have the ability to use Nintex Workflow Cloud. So what is Nintex Workflow Cloud? Nintex Workflow Cloud is a way to be able to design workflows that have no association with SharePoint. So if your organization might have some subsidiary companies or something of that nature, you might have a situation where they're not using SharePoint, but they still want to have the capability to design workflows that run in the cloud. So as you see this design surface right here, we're using the browser. In this situation, we're creating an opportunity in Salesforce. You can see the second box right there. But on the left-hand side, what you're basically doing is you're dragging and dropping what we call actions onto this design surface, and then you can publish these, and these will actually run in the cloud. So the whole thing to take away here is complete independence of SharePoint. These workflows run in the cloud, push and pull information from different systems, but again, have no reliance on SharePoint as the underlying infrastructure. So the great thing here is you can run this pretty much anywhere and connect to a lot of different systems. So you can see on this left-hand side, Salesforce, Dynamics, DocuSign, being able to push and pull information. So this will be shipping in the next 2 weeks from Nintex. It's a very exciting product because one of the biggest downsides when you did a comparison against some of the other competitors was we didn't have a cloud story, and now Nintex is coming out with something that is just going to be revolutionary. So let's go a little bit deeper here. Creating workflows for Office 365 or SharePoint Online. Again, we want to be able to drag and drop and create workflows without writing any code. Again, we can connect to line of business systems, and I'll be giving you an example of how we can do this. Go from just simple notification and tasks to doing multi-stage approvals and stuff like that, because in the real world, when you even like the example I was giving before with onboarding, you're always going to have a situation where there might be 4 or 5 levels of approval, and it can be dynamic. Someone could request more information, and it has to go back a couple stages before you keep on moving. So I'll be giving you an example of that. Here's an example that I'm going to show today after we get through this short slide deck, and just taking a look at a requisition process. So what I did here is created these vertical swim lanes in Visio, and this is how simple it is to create a fairly complex scenario and turn it into a simple solution. So in this situation, we have the initial submitter submits an application for a requisition, and it has to go through 3 levels of approval. The third level of approval here, first one is by a C-level administrator, the next one is by the finance department, the third one is by a couple individuals depending on the value that's going through on the requisition. So anything greater than $10,000 goes to one individual, everything else goes to another. So you can see at any point if any of these people doing making a decision here with the diamonds. If any time they decide that they're going to deny it or reject it, then we have something that we need to do in the outline in the boxes here. And then if everything's approved, we notify all the parties and the requisition was successful. And you can basically see that we have 1, 2, 3, 4, and then a final thing that we do here. So let's take these vertical swim lanes and convert that into a workflow. What does that look like? This is the actual workflow that I'll be showing you today live. But basically, we have something called a state machine. This state machine is an action item that we drag and drop from the left-hand side. Once we do that, we can create different branches for the different states that we should be in. So you'll look on the left-hand side. We have the initial submit. We have a bunch of items that need to happen after initial submit, like sending a notification that you can see in the lower left right here. After that's been sent, then we go for C-level approval. What we're going to do is we're going to assign what's called something called a flexi task, and I'll get to that. But this is basically assigning a SharePoint task to someone for approval or rejection. Once we've approved or rejected, depending on the outcome of this, we'll jump either to the next level of approval or we'll jump to the end. So taking a look at this assigning a flexi task, and I'll explain what this does more in the demonstration. It has a couple paths. If we approve, we go to the next stage. If we deny, we go to the end. So again, look at the mirror image here, and this is this could be a very complex process, but by doing vertical swim lanes in Visio and using just three different types of symbols for making a decision or an action or something that needs to be done here, it's very simple to translate that into a real live working situation. You'll notice on the right I have a condition here. As you can probably guess, this condition says, is it greater than 10,000? If yes, we go down one path and assign a task to an individual. If it's less than 10,000 or equal, then we go to another individual. So you can see this pretty much mirrors the situation where the final approval, if greater than $10,000, goes to one individual or another. And lastly, we end this workflow. So again, no coding. This is not a developer tool. This is meant to be an extension of SharePoint workflow with using visual icons or actions that allow you just to configure them, and we'll go through that. One of the things that we can do, and this is done probably more than 90% of anything that you end up doing, is using two action items. One of them is to send a notification to somebody via email with a body in the email that's customized based on what the user put in the SharePoint form. But also, we talked about assigning a task so that the person that's being assigned a task, like a manager, can approve or reject. This is a very common pattern. So the way this works in the SharePoint workflow is, underneath settings, you basically set when this workflow should run. The workflow can run in a bunch of different ways. When an item is created in a SharePoint list, when an item is modified in a SharePoint list, and you can also do it when individual items are changed, and we can also schedule workflows to run. But one of the things about this is, in this situation, when we receive the submit from the form, the workflow starts, we send the request to the manager via the task, the manager responds with either approve or reject, and then the submitter is notified with one of these emails down at the bottom saying, hey, you've been rejected or you've been approved, and then the workflow ends. So workflows can be as simple as this inside of SharePoint, and again, this is a very common thing to do and very easy thing to do. Once you understand how to use this product, this takes less than an hour to create something like this and format it and do the whole process. It's very simple. Here's a great thing, and I think if you're watching what's going on here, this is one of the questions that people always ask. Is there a way for a manager to be able to respond to a task via email? And the answer is yes. In most SharePoint tasks, what has to happen is the user normally has to go back and look at that task and then say, I approve or reject it. what we're saying is when you assign a task, this manager or individual is going to receive an email. And this thing called lazy approval is nothing more than setting a checkbox in the configuration of this action item. When the person receives that email, they have the option to reply with a yes, no, approved, reject. You have a bunch of different keywords. There's about 16 different keywords that all map to approve or reject. So this is a very loved feature, like I said, by the managers, and it means that you could be at lunch, and if you receive a task and you understand the contents of that task, you can go ahead and just respond, I approve, or I can say no, or rejected, or denied. It is customizable as well. You could actually add your own custom words. I've had other companies that have joked around and created something like hell no or hell yes. If you put that in there, as long as it maps to approved or rejected, it actually will work. It is case insensitive, by the way, as well. So this is a great feature that you'll really love. On the form side of it, the forms allow you to create, the form designer, again, is browser-based. There's nothing to install. Once you license this product for Office 365 or SharePoint on-premise, you are given the ability to create forms in the browser. A lot of different logic that you could put in there, but besides just the logic is I can push my forms to SharePoint. I can push my forms to the internet so that people can, again, fill out a form using an internet link without having access to our internal SharePoint, or I can put it out to a mobile device as well. So there's a lot of different ways that you use the form designer to actually be able to create some pretty cool forms here that go way beyond anything you could do with any competitive product. So on the left-hand side are a bunch of general form controls that you can use, and I'll cover these as we go into the demonstration of basically looking at, being able to do geolocation. How can I create a mobile device that I know when the person submits the form where they were at? So for doing surveys, different things I can do like a people chooser. So when I'm trying to choose dynamically who should approve this expense report, maybe you have some kind of form that's being filled out and you need to fill out who the person is that actually should be making the approval. You can go and use this one control, drag it and drop it, and it'll query Active Directory and look for that person. So a lot of the more complex things like creating repeating sections, being able to create hyperlinks, I mean a lot of different things you can do. On the right-hand side, you're seeing all the SharePoint list columns. So these are all the columns that you have in your SharePoint list at the current time that you're creating the form. So you can drag and drop these and place them anywhere on the form that you want to. You can also, on the fly, create SharePoint list items, and they will be added to this panel automatically. The next part was talking about the cloud solution part, is being able to communicate with external cloud solutions. So if we're pulling stuff from Box, pushing documents from Box, we might do stuff like get something out of Salesforce.com, create some kind of document, do a document generation from a Word template into a PDF, and then store that PDF in Google Drive or Box or wherever you wanted to put that. So again, this Nintex cloud offer, the Nintex Live, is basically giving you the ability to communicate with the cloud here. So before I get into the demo, just again, I want to reemphasize the fact that we can do it. We can create forms from the desktop. We can push them to the internet. We can push them to mobile devices. And behind that, these workflows can sit and actually do different kind of operations that we want to. So let's go ahead and let me go ahead and get into this demo and really give you a hands-on feel for what this product can do. I'm going to end this slideshow. Give me a second here. So what you're looking at here is a SharePoint list. We're looking at a SharePoint list with all the columns that are part of it. So one of the things we wanted to do with that requisition is we had to go in there and create a bunch of different columns and create the different choices for whether we had single lines of text, date and time, choices, all your typical SharePoint column types that you can have. And what we wanted to be able to do is we wanted to be able to create this requisition application and have a form that users fill out. So the way this looks here, and this is 3 items that already went through that I put through earlier, and one of the things I wanted to be able to show you was here are the columns that we just created in the SharePoint, for the list columns. And things that we can do here is we can show like what stages we're at with approvals that you see here, yes, 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 no, 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 approval dates, account numbers, any comments that came through on the form. These are all things that we can push through, product total here for people that are purchasing stuff. But let's go ahead and take a look at what this form looks like. Instead of just being a generic form, this is what the form looks like once it's done with Nintex. And I'm going to show you how this was built. So we basically have all those items that were dragged and dropped onto this surface, and we can apply different logic. So one of the things I wanted to show you here is we do have the ability to do some dynamic hiding of controls. Right here, if we have something like for the funding type is something other, it's going to bring up this down here. I'm just going to type some junk in there so you can see this is working. But based on one control, we can control whether we need to show other controls. So anytime some user comes in there and makes a selection, we want to hide information that is not relevant to what they're selecting. We can also go in here and put in information. I'm going to type just some junk in here. But if I know that these products are going to cost, I need 12 of these products and the unit price, I could also add more products and go in here and just keep on calculating down the line. What this is called is a repeating section control that allows me to add as many. And I can also go in there and do calculations to figure out what's going on as far as line item totals and unit prices, and being able to make it so that we can figure out those values down here when we're doing the calculations. Another thing that's very common is making sure that when we're moving away from digital, when we're going from paper and having hard-coded signatures on paper, is being able to do something like accepting terms. So this is very common where I can go in here and have some rules that are associated with this form that I'm not going to allow you to click this unless you say you accept the terms. So a lot of times within an organization, this will suffice for a signature as long as you have the proper legalese here stated here. I can also add attachments if I want to, attach documents up to 2 gigs here if I want to. You can control that size. And I can also force people to have to put in information. So there's a lot of things that we can do around rules that are here. So if I try to hit save right now, you're going to see that it's going to come up and say the email contacts don't match, please verify. So if I go in here and put that in, it'll still get me because my rule here says, do these 2 match each other? So again, if I do that in here and do that, it's going to say it doesn't match. Once I come in here and correct that, put in some information here. I'm just typing some junk in here, some comments. One thing, again, like if I didn't accept the terms, it's going to highlight the terms, and again, it'll tell me this is a required field down here. So once I go in there and save that, then that is actually submitted in here. Now, one of the cool things about this product, when we run a workflow against it, at any time we can come back in and see where we're at. So even though in this workflow, I actually put some information to update this list. This is one of the things you can do from a workflow, is update your list to give it an idea of where it's at. But if you take a look at someone like this one that was fully approved, I can go back in later and view the workflow history, and I can either say I know that this workflow is completed, or it's still going on. But one thing you'll notice is everything in green was a path that we took. So on the left-hand side, what you'll see is initial submit went all the way down the left-hand side. We got to the C-level approver. The C-level approver came all the way down, and notice it's green. We went down this path to approve. When we went to the finance approver, we actually had an approval here. It went down this side. We went all the way back up to the next stage, and you can see that the value was less than $10,000, and that person went ahead and approved it, and then we went and updated some values. Then finally, we ended in the far right-hand side. We didn't have any errors, so we didn't go down this path, but this is a way that we can go back and view the history of everything that went on, and we can get that either in a graphical or a visual, or a textual environment as well. So let's go ahead and take a look at the form, and then we'll go dive deeper into the workflow. So here's the actual form, and what I want you to notice is that we had some special things going on. Remember with the funding type, we were saying that if the funding type was equal to something that had certain values, that we wanted to hide this additional funding information. And the way we do that is using something called rules. So I have a rule on the right-hand side, and I think you'll be able to really relate to this rule because it's very simple in the way we do it. It uses a very Excel-like language, which is basically like Visual Basic language. And what I'm saying is the funding type does not equal special project, the exact line there, and it doesn't equal other, then we're actually going to hide that information. So that's how we're hiding this whole control right here, is using some special rules. And we can use special rules to hide information and show information. Remember with the accepted terms that it had to be selected. That's one of the things that we set up in the SharePoint list. So that came directly from the SharePoint list saying that it's a required field. Another thing is, remember the matching emails. We had something with matching emails here up at the top that we needed these two emails to match. And let's just take a look at that rule. So we're just saying that the email contact 1 and email contact 2, they must be the same, and they must have an @ sign in them. So that's what we're basically checking, that these are both equal in strings, but they both have an @ sign in there. And if you were doing this for real, you'd go a lot more deeper and add the extension as well. Now the beauty is, on the left-hand side, I can drag and drop anything I want to. So let me just clear out a bunch of these controls. And how do I create a form? How do I go in there and do that? Well, remember I told you that your SharePoint list columns are shown on the left-hand side. So, we had approval date, we had submission date. When I want to add those in here, I just drag and drop those in there. I can go and put, account number, name. We had that funding type. So if I put funding type in here, and just let me show you how easy this is to check and verify as we're working with this, I can always go through and do a preview and make sure that it's what I want. So you're going in here in preview mode, and then you can actually take a look and make sure that all your controls are coming up correctly, that you have everything that's working. So we can go back and forth and add and subtract different controls. On the left-hand side, what I want to point out as well, under General, we can populate from a SQL database, so I can add a drop-down or radio buttons that allow you to be able to connect to a SQL server and pull information from that. I can also do a web request, so I can actually make a web service call and populate controls as well if I want to. So a bunch of different things that I can do here. On the top-hand side, let me show you some other things that you can do. I talked about being able to publish these forms to the actual internet. So there's something called a live setting. The live setting allows me to take my exact form and actually push that to the internet either anonymously, or I can push it as authenticated. So that means that I'm going to publish a URL to this form, which will bring it up on the internet and allow users to input that information. If I don't do anonymous, I can actually put in the actual users or group of users that should have access to this form only. So think about that. You're doing business with another organization. You don't want to add them to Active Directory. You don't want to modify your SharePoint security settings. What you do is you go put something at domain. So if I wanted to give everyone at let's say Netwoven access to this actual form, I could actually do a wildcard and go in there and say star at netwoven.com. Now anyone that comes from a netwoven.com domain will actually be able to click on this link and enter information. If they are not from this domain, they will not have access. So again, I can do this at an individual level, or I can add names at a specific name in here and actually go in there and check those. So what does this look like? What does this form look like as an internet form? If I right-click and say open a new window, here's the actual form that's going to come up. I want you to notice that it's not coming from my internal site. This is actually showing up on the internet through that link as an anonymous entry, and I'll just put in a bunch of different information here to make this a real entry. And then what we'll do is we'll actually see this come up in a minute here. I'm just going to put in some stuff in here. I'm going to accept the terms, and what will happen is I can send that, and it's been successfully submitted. So what's going to happen is it takes about a minute or two, and what will happen is if we were going to go back to our list here, what you should see in about 2 minutes or so is you should see that extra entry show up here at the bottom. It's going to go all the way through our firewall and actually be entered into this list. So like I said, it takes a minute or two to go through the Nintex Live Gateway, but eventually what will happen is that information will show up in here. So that's a really cool thing about being able to push to the internet. Another thing too is for getting really deep and being able to brand with your own logos and stuff. You always have the capability to do customized cascading style sheets, do anything custom with JavaScript, change the height of the form, do all these different things. But another thing that I can do as well is I can target a bunch of other devices that I want to be able to push this form out to. So I can push it out to the Nintex Mobile. I can push it out to an iPhone and Android, depending on what I want to do. It'll actually allow me to create a whole separate form for that. So for a Nintex mobile phone, it's going to actually add the layout. It'll give me the first layout that it wants to try, automatically generate the layout, but it's pretty much up to you to go in there, delete all the controls, and figure out, okay, for this mobile application, these are the only fields that I really care about, and be able to push those out there. And then what will happen is these will actually get pushed out to the mobile phone. So having said that, let me show you an application that I created for a client here. And here's my phone. I'm hoping no one's going to text me in the next second or so here. But you get something called Nintex Mobile. Nintex Mobile, I didn't mean to put my phone down because it went into some horrible mode there. Let me go ahead and show you this. So Nintex Mobile right here is an application that's a free download on any mobile device. What this basically does is when you open up Nintex Mobile, it gives you the ability to actually authenticate yourself in Nintex Mobile. Once you do that and point it to your SharePoint URL, it will figure out who you are and what you have access to. So if I'm in human resources, I might only have access to a few applications, but if I'm in legal, I might have something else. So you can create categories, and you can put all your forms that you've pushed out to those mobile devices, and they'll show up on here. So one of the things I did is I created this workplace incident reporting, and when we take a look at this mobile application, one of the things I wanted to be able to do is have a drop-down that says, okay, what type of incident were we looking at? Some kind of, what was the date that this occurred? Maybe it happened in October or November, let's say October 15th, and I say okay to that. I can put in that information. We can also put in the time. Here's a really cool feature for mobile is I can actually figure out where I'm at. So let's say that I'm creating an application, a mobile application where the location is critical so that I know where a survey was done or where something happened, this is automatically enabled as part of your phone. You can see where I'm at right now. I can zoom in and make sure it's correct. Once I'm correct about that, I can go in there and click the location button, and this is going to give me the latitude and longitude that you can use later for your reporting there. So there's the address there, and you can see that it put in all the information in there. So this is really unique to this product of having the ability to turn your phone into a mobile work phone piece of equipment, and we can put GPS location, being able to put a description. Here's the other thing that we do out of the box as well, barcode reading. So if you have a situation where someone needs to reorder something, or you have some equipment that has barcodes on it, when you're filling out a form, all you do is you take and click on that barcode symbol. That barcode symbol basically turns your phone into a barcode reader. So I have this receipt right here, this invoice, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down to the bottom here, and what it basically did was pick up the barcode down at the bottom. Let me do that for you one more time. So you can see on the screen that says please pay this amount on my phone. As I move that red line across the barcode, it'll actually pick it up. If I was doing it against VistaPrint, here are my cards from VistaPrint, and again, if I go against the barcode, you can see it's very quick at reading this. So any money spent on barcode readers can go away, because everyone that has a mobile device, their mobile device becomes a barcode reader. Lastly, what I wanted to show you, some functionality that's really interesting here, is the ability to attach photos and also being able to edit those photos on your device, attach videos, and also documents. So all I got to do is click, what I want to do, attach a file, attach a gallery photo, take a video, or use my camera. So I can go in here, take a picture of my business cards, and then when I'm done, you'll see that it actually attaches them down at the bottom right here. And then what we can do is we can hit submit. So again, this is a really, really interesting way of being able to take your forms and extend that to your mobile workforce. And the thing about this as well is this is all inclusive with the forms capability of SharePoint. You're not paying extra for this capability. This application that you're seeing here, the Nintex Mobile, is free. It's a free download, and your license covers as many mobile devices as you want, so it's not bound by users. You can actually go in there. One other thing too is you can also skin your applications. This is an application that uses Nintex Mobile, but you'll see that it's skinned to a customer. So we worked with this customer to create a custom app. So this is another option you have. If you don't want to use a generic Nintex Mobile application, you can skin it to have your own company name and branding on there as well. So some really, really interesting things that you can do here. And again, when you take a look at the devices, there's about 17 different devices that are supported beyond just these that you see right here. Okay. One of the other things I wanted to show you is when we jump out of just doing the design is what about the workflow part of it. So I showed you this before, and this is something that everyone kind of asked me is like, okay, when we want to send a notification, how do we do that? How do we just notify? So you're dragging and dropping action items from the left here, and to send an email notification, it's just a simple fact of going in here, not writing one line of code. Who do you want to send this to? It'll actually pick it up in Active Directory when you start typing here, once it starts figuring out who you're using, or you can actually go and take a look and go into the directory and search for those individuals as well. So you can come in here and do an internal search or do whatever you want to be able to do there. So a lot of stuff is really configured for you. If I were to send it to myself, it'll eventually resolve that to my name. The subject you want to send, as far as the subject of the email, and then you can create any kind of dynamic email that you want to send, and you have access as you're typing the email here and adding I'm just typing junk in here, but as you're typing stuff, if you want to put dynamic references in there, I could say, well, I want to add item properties like the emails, the contact email, and that'll actually put it inside of the contents of your email. So again, this is giving you the ability to fully customize dynamic emails based on some kind of input on the form. So that's how you send an email. The other thing is doing a task. We talked about assigning a flexi task. Flexi task is really unique because one thing you can do is when you configure the flexi task, which is assigning a SharePoint task, remember I talked about doing lazy approval. So let's say I come in here and I'm assigning this to me, or I want to maybe assign it to my manager. I can go in there and assign this to my manager. I can say I want to make it lazy approval. So just by clicking this box right here means that when the person receives a task notification, they will be able to say I approve or reject. You can also add different outcomes. So you could say something like I need more information and make that an outcome. So you can see besides approve, reject, I could say more info or pretty much anything you want to. You could type in anything you want to, and that becomes a branch that you can go down, and it'll actually add that to that task. The task notification that goes out is an email. The email, it has a generic template that you'll modify that'll show you the information that you have to fill out. But one of the really cool things here is once you've been notified, we can also send out reminders, how many reminders that individual should receive, and the frequency. And also the biggest thing here is what happens when someone doesn't do the task that was assigned to them. We allow you to have two different types of escalation types. If you say none, that means we're basically going to wait until they come back. But what you can do is you can say that you can complete the task automatically after a certain amount of time and say that this should be approved, rejected automatically. You can set it up in your rules here, but you can also say I want to delegate the task. So after a certain amount of days, I might have to say after 3 days I want to delegate to a certain individual, and so I might want to look up in the organization who I might want to send that. So I might want to go to my manager and delegate that to my manager if after 3 days I have not completed that task. So you can see here there's a lot of information around tasks and taking care of a lot of these gotcha scenarios like what if someone's gone, how do we remind people. You also have the ability to modify the form that people will see when they're actually assigned the task. So when you go to a task, you're actually given the opportunity to modify that form as well so that you can put in all the information that the user might need to see to make their decision here. So you can see there's a lot of information. Maybe not all of it's relevant to that user, so I can delete a lot of information that's not relevant. I can move this form up. I can say that I really only need to show these 8 pieces of information, and I can also set rules and pretty much do everything else I was assigning to people up here in the forms that you were seeing me do before, right? And also remember, I might get this task on my mobile device, so instead of just doing a task on the desktop, I can say I want to go to a Nintex mobile phone and give that user the ability to approve or reject, and depending on what they need to do, I can come in here and say, well, the mobile device is constrained by real estate. Maybe I just want them to approve or reject and then put a couple of lines of information here. Once I'm done with that, I can submit that and save that. So it makes it very easy to be able to do that. Another thing as well, when we're talking about doing the forms and the workflow here, is being able to connect to a bunch of different other applications. So when you take a look on the left-hand side, I can connect to Active Directory. When we talk about integration, when we talk about provisioning, maybe I need to create a user in Active Directory as part of my HR onboarding and stuff like that. So you have connectivity to all of SharePoint and Active Directory, Exchange, doing different things for tasks approval, sending tasks, creating emails, Let's say that we want to actually do something with logic where we're doing if-else types of situation. Also communicating with the outside world, being able to communicate with DocuSign or Adobe or Office 365 to push and pull information if we're talking from on-prem, and a whole list of things that we can manipulate while we're actually going through and running these workflows. Like even on the right-hand side, remember I had that condition if it was greater than $10,000. Here's how simple it was. We were saying that hidden product total is greater than the value 10,000, and then we basically have a yes-no. Based on that yes-no, we go down the path. If it's greater than 10,000, we actually have a workflow that's associated with that individual either rejecting or approving that. So we send a notification saying you've been approved or you've been rejected, and then we can just keep on moving on from there. So very robust capabilities. One other piece here on the left-hand side is something called Hawkeye. This is something that was just released from Nintex. This Hawkeye gives you the ability to collect data at any point in your workflow from any data that's sitting inside your workflow. So I can make up a name saying sales value, and I can go in here and select what data is part of my workflow, and I can go in here and say, let's say funding, let's see the actual product total. So if that was something that I was interested in, I can take this product total and save that. What this basically does is the beacon stores this information in a data warehouse. So any information in the whole workflow, regardless of where it came from, I can create a beacon and configure it to store that data, and I can just keep on adding beacon after beacon after beacon for all the data I want. And so in this case, let's say that this was an expense report. Later on, what I can do with Hawkeye is I can create something called a lens. What the lens allows me to do, especially for something like this that you're looking at, which is an expense report, is I'm collecting data with Hawkeye that tells me all the different types of categories, all the different individuals that are submitting expense reports in our workflow. Then I can do is I can come in here, and you can create these digital dashboards here. Very simple. Like these take literally minutes to create by dragging and dropping all the fields from the beacon. So in this situation, I can go and take a look at a category by spending rank, so I can see who's spending the most on travel. You can see that engineering and sales are spending the most on travel here. But then if I want to just filter by administration, I can click on administration in this control, and it'll tell me what they're spending here versus someone like operations, how much they're spending versus management. So you can see that everything gets filtered. If I'm only interested in spend by location, I can come up here and click on Australia, and it'll actually filter everything by Australia. So all these are interconnected using Power BI, and this is part of a Nintex Hawkeye that allows you to collect data from your workflow. Super powerful, super easy. You can create multiple types of different diagrams and dashboards here to show all the different ways that people are spending. If I want to click on administration, you can see that everything is correlated and filtered. On operations, I can do that. I can also get it based on what were the average claim days. So these are all the metrics that you can collect using a Hawkeye beacon for your reports as well. So slicing and dicing information, looking at the claim approvals, and also having the ability to look at how much is this claim approval actually saving us. So you can actually get a cost comparison and the return on investment that you're getting based on Nintex and everything that you're doing with it. Okay. Lastly, what I want to do is come up here and show you where people are using Nintex. And I've just showed you one slice and gave you some ideas. So if you take a look at the top solutions that people are creating with Nintex workflow and forms and the whole Nintex platform, these are probably your top 20 things that are being done within the different organizations. Okay, so take a look at those. These, for doing stuff like I was showing you health and safety inspections is something that you could create a mobile application that has GPS. RFP management, obviously HR for doing onboarding and vacation requests. These are all the simple things to do that really save your company a lot of money, okay? One thing I wanted to point out, and one of the reasons that we are a #1 partner with Nintex is our Jumpstart program. One of the things that we do is we give you basically a $2,000 discount on your purchase. We do training for as many people as you want to that can get onto GoToMeeting. We do 2-3-hour sessions to get you up and running. We also allow you 88 hours of consulting as well. So one of the things, the idea here is to really make sure that we accelerate your return on investment. One thing I really do want to point out here is that when you start to look at using Nintex, you will see return on investment in under 12 months. That's very typical for customers that are attacking a lot of simple solutions, is to have the cost of the software plus the services covered in under 12 months for the types of workflows that people are using that are affecting many individuals, or very repetitive, or attached in an email. And we can definitely help you with a lot of the different customers that we've worked with in the past as well. One thing I really do want to encourage you, you probably have some questions here. Feel free to send me an email, alexv@netwoven.com, or take a look at our website, netwoven.com/Nintex. I will gladly send you a copy of my slide deck and answer any information that you have about our Jumpstart program. And also, if you have a certain scenario where you want to create a POC, please contact me. I'm glad to put together a POC if you need proof to send to your management or your colleagues to really show them how this can be used to really help them move forward using Nintex and take advantage of all these capabilities. Having said that, I just touched the surface of what Nintex can do, and I really want to thank you for your time today. I know it's a very compressed schedule in 1 hour, but I'm hoping that you have a flavor of what Nintex can do, and I really appreciate you taking your time today to join us. So again, AlexV@Netwoven, and thank you very much, and I look forward to your questions.
Thanks, Alex. We addressed most questions during the webinar, but we had a couple themes that I was hoping we can go over really quick.
Okay.
The first question was, can everything that you did today be accomplished with both SharePoint on-prem and SharePoint online?
No, there is a little bit of disparity because the SharePoint Online product is not as mature. It hasn't been around as long. But having said that, if you want to send me an email and tell me what you're trying to do, I can let you know what can be done on one versus the other. Remember, on the on-prem environment, you have access to the actual internal infrastructure. When you're dealing with anything in the cloud, you don't have that access. So obviously accessing Active Directory and things like that is not going to be available. But having said that, you can connect to databases, you can connect to web services, you can connect to a host of different other cloud services as well. Lazy approval, by the way, is on both sides.
Thank you. And then the last question, a couple people asked, so if a company decides to move forward with Nintex, can you help them understand how you actually work with companies? Is it just during the POC, or do you work with companies after they buy Nintex as well?
So this is one of the questions I love from people, because if you talk to any of our references, our customer references, you will see that I will make sure through our organization that we hold your hand all the way through it. We offer the training, but we also offer follow-up sessions. We will do whiteboarding sessions. A lot of them are held, run by me, but we also have a bunch of different Nintex engineers as well. The whole idea here is we don't want to sell you a product and walk away. We want to make sure you're successful. So we go beyond and above what you'll find with any other Nintex partner, guaranteed. Any other questions?
There were some Hawkeye questions. To everyone that asked about Hawkeye, we're going to reply to you over email by the end of day tomorrow.
Yeah, just send me any questions to alexv@netwoven.com.
All right.
Great.
With that, this concludes our webinar. Thanks everyone for joining, and we look forward to seeing you next time.
Great. Take care, everybody.